man goes to see his therapist, and he says, Dr. Olsen, I'm in big trouble. I have this recurring horrible nightmare. I'm in a pitch black room, no light whatsoever, and I can't find a way out. There are no windows. There doesn't appear to be a ceiling. I don't know how to get out. I have to get out. I'm developing this anxiety attack, and it's threatening to become a panic attack when I find the door, and I'm reaching around, and there's the door, and I push, and it won't budge. It doesn't open. And now I'm weeping. I'm leaning against the door. Please open. He said, Dr. Olsen, I have to get out of this trap. I don't have time to wait for a lot of analysis. Can you give me a quick way out? And Dr. Olsen says, well, yeah. To tell you the truth, I think I can. Because you see, I know that room. And I know that door. And are you listening? Yes. That door opens inward. And so much of what we do in the Dharma is going in order to get out. It's going in to resolve these questions, these problems. We don't do these meditations to become better meditators. We do the meditations to live better lives, happier lives, more satisfied lives, more productive lives, to get through all the dark times. So that was my story. Last week we talked about resting in loving awareness, about the difficulties that are encountered in meditation by being in a relaxed, rested state without falling asleep, but literally becoming more and more aware, to rest in awareness, to listen to the cicadas and the birds and what have you. That's coming to your senses. And beyond your senses, you begin to open the space, the inner space, and you go from outlook to insight. And when you do, that's not the end of the story. As I say, we're not here just to be good at sitting in bliss, which is wonderful, but it's not the end result. It's to get up and go, to be active. So anyway, our topic for today was to be the third step in the eightfold path, which is the fourth noble truth, and it is the path of right speech. And in thinking about it, and in listening to Jeff last week, I thought I'd take a little different approach to presenting this. Instead of talking about the actual sutra and precept of the eightfold path, let's just think about speech for a minute. Let's talk about vocabulary. When you study the Dharma, or anything, there's a vocabulary that goes with it. And if you and the other guy are not understanding the words, the vocabulary, in the same way, you've created a bad situation right off the bat. You need to understand the words. And Jeff used all the right words for understanding the Dharma. But some of them can be very troubling. For example, attachment. What do you mean? If you want to stop suffering, you don't have desire. You don't have attachment. We all have desires. We start off attached to our mothers. And then, what does this word really mean in terms of a spiritual and an intellectual and a physical life? How does it work? So I thought, okay, let's just go back. We always go back to our Four Noble Truths. Let's go back to the first one, and I think we've already explained to everybody's satisfaction that when you hear the phrase, which you will hear if you go to Dharma things, life is suffering. Well, the immediate response to that is sort of, yes, but. You know? I mean, you're ones that just, that's pretty blunt. Life is suffering. So what are they talking about? We've talked about this before. The word for suffering in Sanskrit and Pali, which was the language of the Buddha, is a big word that covers an entire spectrum from, oh, I love Abraham Lincoln saying, that he was in so much pain, he was like the little boy who stubbed his toe, and he said, I'm too old to cry, and it hurts too much to laugh. That's suffering. From the minor small things like stubbing your toe, all the way to the crucifixions. Suffering covers that whole spectrum. And it doesn't invite arguing when you understand that you're talking about a word that actually, in the most accurate definition, is dissatisfaction. Unbalance or dis-ease. Disease of the body, disease of the mind, just general dis-ease, uneasiness. This is all considered in suffering. And it doesn't take much, as I say, to recognize, okay, the first noble truth is a truth. All sentient beings, by the nature of being sentient beings, experience suffering. We got that one. That was easy. All right? We can all agree on that. So the yes, but is just the instinct to say, yeah, well, wait a minute. And the Buddha says, be skeptical. Ask those questions. So if in your studies you find that yes, but, or wait a minute, or God, I don't quite understand that, take the time to check it out. It's easy now because we have the internet and we have so many people who are here. It was so difficult back in the 1950s. The hippies hadn't even gotten here yet to help out. Really. It took Ram Dass to arrive in my life before I began to make sense of what I was trying desperately to understand. Because something told me that the truth was there, if I could just get hold of it. So that's the first noble truth. The second noble truth says that suffering is caused by, the two big words are desire and attachment. Now, everyone has desires. There's nothing wrong with having desires. We wouldn't exist if people didn't have desires. We all want creature comforts. There is nothing there necessarily. So the word that must be applied here to make sense of it is appropriate. It's appropriate. Is it a desire that is inappropriate? And then you get to the first word of the causes, which is craving. A desire that goes from being healthy, normal, useful, skillful, beneficial, to becoming a craving has now moved into the realm of suffering. And all of us know, maybe experience addictions. They're suffering. There's no such thing even as an addiction to television and Twinkies that doesn't cause suffering. It just does. So craving is inappropriate. So when you hear this, oh, the cause of suffering is desire, think it's appropriate. There you have the first of the big three. craving. The second one is grasping. When you hear the word grasping, do you have a sense of greed, of desperation, of shoving, of getting? I got to get. That's grasping. It's not holding, as Jeff talked about, in the open hand. Where you may want love, but you're not going to try to control that situation or that person. You're not grasping. You may want to have a comfortable life in a nice home, but you're not going to shove other people out of the way or become immoral in order to have it. Again, it is appropriate to desire those things that are beneficial to ourselves and to others. But if you feel so needy that you're constantly trying to reach something and you can't get it, or you do get it, now you go to the third main cause, clinging. So here's the string. I want. I can't get enough. I'm craving. I'm craving, so I'm grabbing. I'm grasping for things. And now what happens, I get hold of them, and the big third one comes in, is called clinging. Now I've got hold of it, I can't let go of it. I've got to hold on to that. And now you're in a power struggle. Everybody following along? This makes sense? Mm-hmm. So these are your causes. Craving. Bet you've had some in your life. Grasping. And clinging. And what motivates or what fuels these inappropriate on the spectrum? Again, we keep going back to equanimity and balance. So you have a spectrum on everything. And later we'll get to the middle way, which is, that's what it's about. And that has shades. But what is fueling this and keeps giving them their gas is ignorance and delusion. Now, there is no word for sin in Buddhism. The word for sin is ignorance. Because the Buddha and those people of that era thought that if you actually understood and stopped being ignorant, you would probably naturally be able to move into less of a problem for the suffering. He may have been right, he may have been wrong on that. There are people I know who just absolutely love their suffering. You know, they just got to have it. They're addicted to their suffering. So he may have been right or wrong there, but he also, you see delusion in the fact, we have a wonderful one that's all over the internet right now. It's all over the news. If we didn't test, we wouldn't have cases of virus. What? What? How totally illogical, how deluded is that? That if you put your head in the sand and you can't see it, it doesn't exist. There's some kind of psychological term for that with children who can't carry out that if it's not in the room, it's still there.
Object permanence.
Object permanence. Mm-hmm. You want to say a word or two about that? Delusion is because I believe it. That's got to be the way it is. I mean, without question. Now, I'm finding out a lot about delusions and illusion by losing my sight. I live in a world of hallucinations. I know I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. uh, it's quite interesting actually, because it makes you realize how in less physical things you can think something is one way when that's not the way it is at all. So if you stay with a closed mind and you cling to opinions and you grasp at solutions, delusion is present. Would you like to say something about delusion? Or you got anything you want to add to that? Because it's a big part of suffering.
Yeah, actually, the human development word is object permanence, but really the basic psychological word is denial.
That's the word I was looking for. Gotcha.
And it's not just a river in Egypt. Denial. And so it's the way that I always illustrate denial is there's a children's book that says that whose title is "There's an Elephant in the Room." Have you ever seen this book? It's about a family living in a small house with an elephant in the corner of the living room, and the elephant keeps growing, but the family pretends there's not an elephant there. This is what families do. You know, denial. And so they continue, and the elephant continues to grow pretty soon, like it's half of the living room, and they have to crawl over it to get to the kitchen and those things. But they continue to do it because they continue to deny, they continue to deny the reality and live in the moment as it is, which is, Buddhist idea. And so then they suffer. They have to do a lot of, all your words seem to me to be about enormous amount of effort with banging your head against the same wall. Life's not supposed to be that amount of effort. If you're doing that, you're swimming upstream. And all those things, those three, remind me of that. And denial is just is a state of being connected with all of those.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps or not.
Oh, I know that helped me. I'm trying not to do the thing that last time was the first time I ever saw myself on the film with Jeff. And through his entire talk, I'm going, yeah, and I didn't realize it until I saw it. But yes, there we go. So now we've got the truth of the fact that it's perfectly normal to suffer. Guess what, guys? We're all doing it. Nothing special about you. It's just the way it is. And the second thing is, these are the reasons that we have. These are the causes. And you get to the truth. Those are the truth. Everybody find truth in those causes? Okay? The third noble truth is when you get to the word attachment. Now, we are attached in our mother's womb. We arrive in this world attached from the transition from wherever we were before to this world. And again, the word appropriate becomes appropriate. And again, you're on a spectrum, because now the third noble truth says there is a way out. The door opens. To go out, you got to go in. You have to achieve self-knowledge, self-recognition, self-love, the real thing, not the phony kind, the healthy kind. You have to be able to make judgments. And judgments in Buddhism depend on three things. Does it work? Is it virtuously skillful? They use the word skillful. Now, I've heard people say, well, skillful could apply to a bank robber or, an axe murderer. So what is that? Well, if you actually look at the Sanskrit word, it's virtuous efficiency, so to speak. It's workable. It's constructive. That's virtuous. In other words, for good. The second is it wholesome? Is it healthy? Or is it throwing you out of balance? Unhealthy is to be out of balance. And the third is, does it serve a beneficial purpose for yourself and others? So when you go into the third noble truth, you say, I can make choices. I may not be able to stop pain, but I can cease to suffer. Because suffering comes from my mind and my emotions. That's different than physical pain. People who are in great pain sometimes are very happy people, believe it or not. I was married to one who was amazing. Or you can have an ingrown fingernail and suffer the tortures of the damned, depending on how you choose to take it psychologically. Let everybody go along with that. So what happens when you get attached? Let's use the idea that he just put out, like the elephant in the room. Let's say now you're a parent and you're very attached to your baby, whether you're a mother or a father. You are attached to that child. And as that child grows, what happens if you have an unhealthy attachment to them? If you can't let go of them? If you can't allow them to grow into being who they want to be and not who you want them to be? So we're back to balance. When do we start letting go of our children? It can be painful watching a 4-year-old toddling up the steps to his first kindergarten class. My baby's leaving home. You know? It can be painful all the way up. It can be very painful on the other end of the spectrum to say goodbye to our parents, to lose them. So there is a healthy attachment that if you are not balanced yourself, can become unbalanced and unhealthy. So again, it's appropriate. It's appropriate to be totally attached to an infant. You don't take your eyes off them. You sleep with a little thing on there that makes you able to hear them breathing all night long. You don't do that to your teenager who's finally getting out in the world a little bit, hanging out with peers. You have to know every step of the way where that balance is, where you hold on and where you let go.
Can I add something?
Oh,
about
please
the
do, because this
developmental
is
stages?
difficult for me to.
No,
to say.
you're doing beautifully. I always say to people jokingly that if you don't detach from your children, let them go piece by piece, bit by bit, at 45 they live in your basement.
At what?
At 45 they live in your basement.
Oh God, yes, I know.
And that's painful.
Mm-hmm.
That's painful. But if and for mothers, this seems to be an even harder thing because I think you start with this child completely attached to you inwardly, and for fathers, we have to, we sit on the outside of that experience. But you really start to lose your children the moment they come out, little by little. And if you do that in a balanced, appropriate way, every stage has less pain to it. Has well, you lessen it because you know that this is now skillful and appropriate. This is appropriate letting go. And when you do that, everything is manageable. The pain is manageable.
Yes.
And they're not yours to own. It's not about ownership. Yeah, and it's the same thing with everything.
Yeah.
We don't really own anything. I joke about our place on the mountain. And even though I do have the deed for the land, it's really owned by the ants.
I was about to say, and the birds and the
ants own this, and we just like
they
try
don't
to
fill
work our
out
way
any
around
paperwork.
them.
Exactly. But the third noble truth does say that if you are attached to outcomes in an unhealthy way, you will distort your life. And you will find yourself craving, grasping, clinging to a status quo, perhaps, or something. Exactly what Jeff is saying. So we have to learn where it's appropriate, and sometimes it's painful, and sometimes we suffer in the process. But that's how you get out, by going in. And then the fourth noble truth gives you the eightfold path, which is what we started exploring a couple of weeks ago, was right view. And these words, I think, are right view. Are there other words? I'm trying to think of other words that could be. The word right, you used that last time. When we get to the fourth noble truth, the word right is not right as in right and wrong. It's right as in the three things we were talking about judging. Does it work for you? Is it beneficial? Is it healthy? Is that a right view? And you have to ask all the way along. And in the first of those eightfold steps, which is right view and right intention, we didn't film the intention part, and maybe we'll do a whole nother one on that. But we were getting to right speech, which is why I started thinking about right vocabulary, and I thought there might be words here that needed some explanation to really understand how they fit in. Anybody got any they want to throw out that Mark or Jeff or I could maybe elaborate on? Attachment, detachment? No? So, okay, how are we doing on time?
28 minutes.
We are 28 minutes in? So it's about time we stop now, because we're trying to go shorter.
It's up to you. Do you want to spend a little time? Are we doing something on right speech?
I'm going to just say a few words, and then we're going to return to it next week.
Okay.
Because I wanted to go vocabulary first, so we know what we're talking about. When somebody says, don't, oh, you'll stop suffering if you stop desiring, say, I know what he's talking about, Or attachment. Attachment's a big one. But right speech, which is the third step of the Eightfold Path, and it is the first step of the second section of the Eightfold Path, which are the big one for me, and I think for most of us, because it most affects every single day, which is morality and ethics. And morality and ethics are what we live by. These are the principles that make us who we are as human beings, as individuals. We're all one organism, part of one universe, but each of us is individual because of the way we fit our principles together and how we live by them. And this is going to lead us to karma, which is everything we think, say, and do creates our reality. It becomes our personality and our nature. Am I saying that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That this is who we become as a personality. Integrity. I love the word integrity. You know what I think of? Have any of you ever had a 1,000-piece puzzle? And that puzzle is all clouds or trees or butterflies, and it's just one big 1,000 pieces of something, and you got the box. It shows you a picture, but trying to put it together is incredibly difficult. And you put those pieces together one piece at a time until you form the picture. And this is sort of the way we are in terms of ethics, is how do we put our ethics into action. Do you really believe in nonviolence? How far do you go with nonviolence? Do you really ascribe to do no harm? How far do you go with that? Do you really think that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me? Now we're at right speech. That's the stupidest thing anybody ever said. Because probably more suffering is created more times for more people in your life than words misspoken. And sometimes they're unintentional. You're in a bad mood and you say something in a bad mood and it affects somebody for the rest of their life. Right speech is the one and only thing in the whole Buddhist Eightfold Path that is in there twice. It is the first step of the 3 steps for ethics and morality, and it has its own section in what they're known in the second step as the right precepts, which are sort of their idea of commandment type things, only they're not commandments. Anyway, speech, very important. This is a stumbling block for me because I cuss like a sailor. I grew up in a barn and I talk like it. I did, and I had a very nice, high-class family, but in my off hours, that's where I was, at the racetrack or what have you. And my way of venting, because I don't believe in hitting, and I never was very good at silence, is to say, oh shit, or, this is the way, and that's violence. It's ugly. It's vulgar. I hear somebody else do the same thing, and I'm like shocked. What did she just say? And then I say it myself. So this is my Achilles heel. That and patience. I'm impatient. And anybody who believes that if you study the Dharma you're going to turn into a saint is out of their mind. You aren't. It just keeps the lid on it. It just helps you to lead a better life for yourself and everybody else around you. I wish we have plenty of time. We can maybe. Sharon told me a great story that fits right into this from last night, and how the meditation works, how the working from the inside out changes situations as you develop along the way. And we'll talk more. I'm going to go back to, you go back to right speech next week. Mm-hmm. And I've just brought you up to date on vocabulary. And if we have time, I would like to cap this off. We'll go short on the metta meditation. And let Sharon, is that you, Sharon?
I'm here.
Oh, shit. I'm talking to Suzanne. Sorry. Delusional. Can you tell that story?
Sure.
I asked her.
Mentioned it a few times. It was a couple of days ago.
Okay, well, talk up so I can hear you, honey.
Okay. And I was invited to dinner at Citrus, and wasn't thinking of the day, the restrictions, all of the above. Dory was with me, actually. And I was just going to Citrus from here. Drove my car that was illegal. The plates were not the day that I was supposed to be driving. And there were police there in front, pulled me over, and took my plates off my car. I was furious. I was so upset, and I was surprised at the anger that I felt, and the injustice, and all of that. And I had it for a couple of days. I was angry, and I kept thinking of the details about it, and the cops were assholes, and they were, all this and that. And it kind of ruined the beginning of our dinner until I was able to calm down, but I woke up yesterday morning with this aha moment, and everything that was said today by you guys fit in perfectly with it. One of the things that really stood out was the compassion I just felt, you know, you were saying when you get to the moment of really finding the pearl of it, it changes. It changes how you feel about it, since, you know, it's in your body and everything. And the thing was, I felt compassion for this Black Lives movement. Not that I hadn't before, but it was a visceral, more of a experience that there are people in this world who experience that all the time. They're always experiencing that injustice or those feelings. And so there are many lessons that I've gotten from that about anger and all this other stuff, but that's what the primary thing that I took away from that was that I was thankful and grateful for the experience, and it let me lucid the anger that I was feeling, and I was grateful that I had that experience so I could feel that. And
That was
know
a
it.
detachment by walking in somebody else's moccasins for the moment and really feeling what they feel when they go through this constantly, year after year after year. And then the detachment, in essence, the letting go,
Letting go.
the anger. It works. This stuff works.
And just lastly, one thing I wanted to say about that, years ago, I probably would have held on to that and been pissed off and told the story and told it from a different perspective and been, you know, all of the negative stuff about it. And through meditation in these classes, and little by little, it's like it doesn't, when we were talking about, it doesn't ever go away, that flash of anger that I felt. Maybe not maybe, it surely would, because that's who I was, it would have lasted longer. But through practicing, I'm able to release it, let it go quicker. And I'm, you know, you have to kind of be thankful for that, not expect, well, why didn't I, you know, okay, thank you, police officer, for this, I am, you know, I don't know if I'll ever get that way, but I was able to release it sooner, so that,
Less suffering.
less suffering.
That's suffering. But it's a really good example of the fact that all the time that she has spent with meditation and going in and thinking about these things, because she's quite a student, it pays off when you least expect it and in ways you don't anticipate, right? In other words, it all of a sudden has really had a direct effect without an invented situation. It becomes part of who you are. And then you really, when you do that, you make it yours. Very good. One word we didn't talk about was enlightenment. And what she had was a moment of enlightenment. And we say that often, oh, enlighten me. It's getting a piece of knowledge or a fact. But if you ask people who are studying Buddhism, are you enlightened? They'll say, I'm not enlightened. That's because they're expecting to be perfect, to have the full enlightenment, to basically be in a state of nirvana or bliss. And so it's there again, it's a matter of vocabulary. Life, all big things are made up of little things. All of life is made up of one situation after another. And we have a few big things that happen, but mostly it's situations like that test us, that make us grow, that make us think, and what have you. And she was aware of it. And that's the first thing that we kind of go after, is awareness. So, okay, we're going to do a real quick metta. Shall we do a short one?
It's up to you.
Thanks, Sharon. That's good. Okay, I'll leave it to the group. We want a long form or short form?
What time is it?
I don't know.
Oh, we have time.
We have time.
Rock on.
Do a long one.
Okay. We do it every week. We do it every week for the rest of our life. And every day. In one way or another. So now we're back in our comfortable centered position. We open our chest so we get maximum air. Back is straight. Head goes to the sky, fanny goes to the ground. We're between heaven and earth. And we're quiet and we let ourselves drain. We're going to come eventually to what Jeff mentioned, which is no self. None of us here are quite there yet. But it's what happens when everything is perfectly integrated. It's not that you don't exist. It's that your ego, every one of those 1,000 pieces, every one of the revelations have come together to fit in such a way that you're not rubbing against yourself. And one of the best ways, I don't know if that makes sense, I usually say is you outgrow yourself. You don't pay attention to something that isn't asking for attention generally. You don't pay any attention to your toe till you stub it. So when your life is full of all these pushes and pulls and stresses, your ego is having to work to hold itself together to make you healthy and strong. When actually all the pieces come together and your 1,000-piece puzzle is laid out, and all of a sudden you don't have to think about yourself at all. You're not worried. You're not trying to defend yourself. You're not trying to explain yourself. You're not trying to improve yourself. You are being the third step in meditation of just sitting, just breathing, just being. Just being. When the ego has finally taken on, it's totally comfortable when you can look at a picture of the Buddha and see what that tranquility really is about. With all that suffering, how tranquil. The serenity is there because the pieces all fit. And now you're not having to think about your expressions of yourself. You've suddenly gone into a whole nother realm. The realm of no self. And Jeff and I both have used the same poem a number of times. It's a poem by Rumi. I have the whole thing here, but I'll just give you the first lines. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. When we finally are totally egoless, because our ego is so perfectly integrated now, it's there, but you don't have to pay attention to it. Just like you don't pay any attention to your spleen. I mean, it's there and it's working, but you don't pay any attention to it. Your ego is now grown up. It's outgrown all the pettiness and pain and suffering. And you've gone into a situation where you kind of are like the booster rocket that drops off the rocket, and the thing is pushing you up, and then all of a sudden it lets go, and you're really there. None of us are there yet. That's why we say we're not enlightened. That booster rocket has not fallen off, probably for any of us. We're still struggling. But there's a vision there. And the vision is that clear light, that enlightenment is possible, and that if we work for it, we're going to be happier, healthier, friendlier, nicer beings. So now we're going to get to metta. I'm digressing. Sorry about that. I had it in mind because of the Enlightenment. That's a big word that's misunderstood.
Yep.
Okay. So, all of us know 5 people. Take a few deep breaths. Feel the breath in your body. Let go of this talk. Let go of all of it. Just surrender to a little silence, stillness. And realizing that the Dharma is 100% about our well-being, about our reality. To yourself, extend goodwill. Say, may I be well. May no harm come to me. May I live with ease, calm and peaceful. May I be happy. Now bring to mind someone with whom you are truly attached, hopefully in a healthy way. Someone you love with all your heart. And to that person, say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm and peaceful. May you be happy. And now, to the person whose name you may not know, or whose name you know but you've never really had much to do with them. It's the fellow that lives down the street or the girl who waits on you at the supermarket. Your neutral person. If you don't know his or her name, think the word friend. Bring to mind the face of your friend. And say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm and peaceful. May you be happy. Now you wave them goodbye and you bring to mind the person with whom you're in conflict. Doesn't matter whether it's a little conflict like a small grudge or a huge, burning, overwhelming conflict. Do the best you can with this one. To wish that person, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live with ease, calm and peaceful. May you be happy. Take all the time you need with this one or with any of these. But finish off by opening your mind, your heart, your third eye to all that is, to all that are, to all that have been, all that will be. And say to this amazing concept, may all beings everywhere on this plane and all other planes. Be well. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. May all beings everywhere be happy. We didn't put our hands over our hearts, but if we had, let's bring them together, put our palms together, and end with our little benediction. Go in peace. Go making peace. Living gently. Loving mightily. And bowing to the mysteries. Suzanne, will you ding us out, please, or whoever's got the dinger? And thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's always fun. I don't know, I think we ran over time, we got going,
I think we're good.
but everybody pretty comfortable? Okay.